Imagine if the most powerful wealth-building principles weren't created by Wall Street, Silicon Valley, or the latest wave of crypto millionaires, but were discovered thousands of years ago in one of history's richest civilizations. That civilization was Babylon. Known for its towering walls, thriving trade, and extraordinary prosperity, it was the financial powerhouse of the ancient world. Within its streets lived former slaves who became successful merchants, struggling workers who grew into respected lenders, and an ordinary scribe named Arkad, who eventually became the wealthiest man in Babylon. In 1926, George S. Clason brought these timeless parables together in The Richest Man in Babylon, creating a personal finance classic whose lessons remain just as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. If you've ever wondered why your paycheck seems to disappear, why building wealth feels harder than it should, or how some people steadily get richer regardless of their income, this book offers surprisingly practical answers. In this video, we'll explore 7 timeless wealth lessons from The Richest Man in Babylon, connecting each one to modern financial life with memorable stories, real-world examples, and practical strategies you can start applying today. And stay until the final lesson, because it isn't really about money at all. It's about freedom, time, and what true wealth actually looks like. Let's begin with the first and perhaps most important principle: pay yourself first. When we first meet Arkad, he isn't wealthy. He's frustrated, living paycheck to paycheck, watching others build fortunes while he barely gets by. Determined to change his life, he asks a successful moneylender a simple question: why have you become wealthy while I have almost nothing? The answer couldn't have been simpler. A portion of everything you earn belongs to you. In the language of ancient Babylon, the advice was to keep 1 coin out of every 10 before spending the rest. At first, Arkad thought exactly what many people think today: I barely have enough as it is. How can I possibly save? But he committed to setting aside at least 10% of every paycheck before paying anyone else. Over time, his savings grew, and eventually those savings became investments that generated even more wealth. That principle remains the foundation of personal finance today. Consider Ronald Reed, the Vermont gas station attendant and janitor, who quietly accumulated an $8 million fortune. He never earned an extraordinary income. He simply saved consistently, invested patiently, and allowed time to do the heavy lifting. Modern culture encourages constant upgrades, bigger purchases, and lifestyle inflation. Babylon teaches the opposite: save first and spend what's left. Wealth doesn't begin when your income increases. It begins when you consistently keep part of what you earn. But saving alone isn't enough if your spending rises every time your income does. That leads directly to the second lesson: live below your means. Arkad warned that expenses naturally expand to match income unless you consciously control them. Today, we'd call this lifestyle inflation. Imagine someone earning $50,000 a year. Soon they earn $80,000, then $120,000. Yet somehow, they still feel financially stretched because every raise comes with a larger house, a newer car, more subscriptions, and bigger monthly payments. It's a pattern that's incredibly common today. Many Americans struggle financially not simply because they don't earn enough, but because their lifestyle grows just as quickly as their paycheck. One Babylonian craftsman insisted he couldn't save because every coin he earned was already committed to expenses. But when Arkad examined his spending, he found that many of those so-called necessities were really optional luxuries. Expensive habits had quietly disguised themselves as essential purchases. That lesson hasn't changed over the centuries. The world constantly encourages you to spend more, upgrade more, and consume more. Babylon teaches that unless you control your spending, it will eventually control you. If managing money feels difficult on a modest income, earning more alone won't solve the problem. Better financial habits will. Once you've learned to save consistently and control your spending, the next step is making your money work on your behalf. Arkad taught that money should never remain idle. Wealth grows when every dollar has a job. In ancient Babylon, that often meant financing merchants whose trading expeditions generated profits. Today, it means investing in productive assets like diversified stock index funds, real estate, or businesses that create long-term value. Think of every dollar you own as an employee. Money sitting in cash earns very little, but money invested wisely continues working day and night, generating returns that can eventually produce even more returns. That's the quiet power of compound growth, and it's one of the most important forces behind long-term wealth creation. There's an important warning that comes with making your money grow: invest wisely. One story tells of a man who trusted his hard-earned savings to a brickmaker who claimed he could purchase valuable gemstones. The problem was simple. The brickmaker knew nothing about gemstones. When he returned, the precious gems turned out to be nothing more than worthless pieces of colored glass, and the man's savings were gone. Arkad's response was unforgettable. Would you ask a baker to judge the value of jewels? Then why trust someone without expertise to manage your money? That lesson is just as relevant today. People still chase the latest hot stock, jump into speculative cryptocurrencies without understanding them, or hand their money to self-proclaimed financial experts who know far less than they pretend. The principle hasn't changed. Make your money grow, but only invest in opportunities you truly understand and with people who have earned your trust. Most people spend their lives working for money. Wealthy people eventually reach a point where their money works for them, but growing wealth isn't enough if you don't protect it. That brings us to the fourth lesson. Protect what you've built. Babylon's massive walls weren't built to impress visitors. They were built to defend the city's prosperity. Your finances deserve the same kind of protection. Arkad warned that your principal should always be protected before you worry about earning returns. Throughout the book, people repeatedly lose fortunes by lending money carelessly or believing promises of easy riches. One man hands over his savings to a trader promising extraordinary profits, only to watch both the money and the trader disappear. Thousands of years later, the story keeps repeating itself. Ponzi schemes, investment fraud, speculative bubbles, and companies that collapse overnight have cost countless investors billions of dollars. Many fortunes disappear for one simple reason. People ignore the importance of protecting their capital. History has shown that even businesses and fortunes that appear unstoppable can disappear remarkably fast. The lesson is straightforward. Build financial walls around your wealth. Invest in businesses and assets you understand. Be skeptical of investments promising unusually high returns with little risk. Seek advice from knowledgeable professionals rather than persuasive salespeople. Long-term wealth isn't built by hitting home runs. More often, it's built by consistently avoiding devastating mistakes. Even if you protect your wealth, however, there's another challenge you can't avoid: time. Eventually, there will come a day when you're no longer able or willing to work. That's why the fifth lesson is planning for your future income. Arkad advised people to prepare while they were still earning so both they and their families would remain financially secure later in life. One of the book's most memorable characters is Dabasir, a camel trader whose life completely fell apart after overwhelming debt forced him into slavery. Through discipline, persistence, and a commitment to repaying every obligation one step at a time, he eventually regained both his freedom and his financial stability. But Dabasir didn't stop once he became debt-free. He understood that earning money wasn't enough. He needed to create income that would continue long after his working years were over. In Babylon, that often meant purchasing land or making loans that generated ongoing interest. Today, it could mean consistently contributing to retirement accounts, investing in dividend-paying companies, owning rental properties, or building other sources of passive income that continue producing cash flow over time. The mathematics behind starting early are incredibly powerful. Someone who invests just a few $100s each month beginning in their 20s can accumulate hundreds of thousands of dollars by retirement simply by allowing compound growth enough time to work. The details may change, but the principle never does. Eventually, everyone reaches a stage of life when earned income slows or stops altogether. When that day arrives, you'll either live from the assets you've built or rely on someone else to support you. The best time to start preparing was years ago. The next best time is today. Babylon's wisdom also reminds us that lasting wealth comes from ownership rather than constant consumption. The sixth lesson is to become an owner instead of simply a consumer. The book encourages people to own their homes because, in ancient Babylon, paying rent meant building someone else's wealth, while ownership built your own. Today's housing market is obviously more complicated. In some situations, renting can absolutely make better financial sense than buying, but the deeper principle goes far beyond real estate. Focus on acquiring assets instead of simply accumulating expenses. For one person, that may mean buying a home. For someone else, it could mean starting a business, creating digital products, investing in productive companies, or owning assets that continue generating income for years. One Babylonian story tells of a man who faithfully paid rent throughout his entire life. He met every payment on time, but when old age arrived, he had nothing to show for decades of work. His neighbor, who purchased a modest home, finished life with stability, security, and valuable property. That contrast still matters today. Consumers spend money on things that lose value. Owners build assets that continue creating value. Consumers buy possessions. Owners buy freedom. Which brings us to the final lesson, and perhaps the most important one of all. Because your greatest asset isn't your bank account, it's you. The seventh lesson is to invest in yourself. Arcad reminded his students that true wealth isn't measured by the size of the purse you carry. It's measured by your ability to earn, create value, and continually improve yourself. Arcad's final lesson may be the most valuable of them all. He taught that a full purse won't stay full for long if you don't continue building the knowledge needed to refill it. In other words, your greatest asset isn't your money, it's your ability to create more of it. In ancient Babylon, young people were encouraged to learn valuable trades, seek mentors, and constantly sharpen their skills. The wealthiest citizens weren't simply fortunate. They became successful because they continually improved their judgment, their discipline, and their ability to create value. That principle is just as true today. We've all seen stories of lottery winners who lose millions within a few years because they never developed the habits required to manage wealth. At the same time, countless immigrants have arrived in America with little more than determination, valuable skills, and a willingness to learn, only to build extraordinary wealth within a single generation. The difference isn't luck, it's capability. When you invest in yourself, your education, your skills, your financial knowledge, your habits, and your discipline, you create something far more valuable than any investment portfolio. You create an asset that continues producing value no matter what happens around you. Markets will rise and fall. Companies will come and go. Entire industries will change. But the knowledge, judgment, and skills you've developed stay with you wherever you go. Money can disappear. Experience rarely does. And every lesson you learn increases your ability to earn, invest, and build wealth throughout your life. That brings us to the bigger picture. The Richest Man in Babylon isn't simply an old collection of financial stories. It's a practical guide to building lasting wealth, and its principles remain remarkably relevant nearly a century after the book was published. Its message is surprisingly simple. Pay yourself first. Live below your means. Put your money to work. Protect what you've built. Prepare for the future. Focus on owning productive assets and never stop investing in yourself. These aren't complicated financial strategies. They're timeless habits that compound over decades. Ultimately, wealth has never been about getting lucky or impressing other people. It's about consistently making better financial decisions year after year. So, ask yourself one question. Are your daily habits moving you closer to financial freedom, or are they quietly pulling you further away from it? Because the wealthiest people aren't necessarily those with the biggest bank accounts. They're the ones who have built reliable income streams, protected their assets, developed valuable skills, and earned something even more important than money, the freedom to live life on their own terms. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into timeless personal finance books and wealth-building principles. And if you'd like to continue learning, check out our video on the psychology of money. While The Richest Man in Babylon teaches the timeless rules of building wealth, the psychology of money explores the behaviors and decisions that determine whether people actually become wealthy. Together, they offer a powerful framework for changing the way you think about money and the way you build it. This is Finance Haven, where smart financial decisions today create a more confident tomorrow.